Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Another guest, another week by ENZYME at Work. I'm Sébastien. This is the co-founder of ENZYME at Work, and today I'm super happy. Another great guest, Louis Schwab, that will introduce himself. So this is the topic of today. It's challenging for me. This is why I brought on board Louis to give us more insights about what we are going to talk about today. So it's about unlocking capital for nature restoration and about nature digital passport. So we are going to talk about carbon footprint. We are going to talk about carbon credit. We are going to talk about forestry. We are going to talk about sustainable finance. And I really wanted, at least for me, to put all this together and have a clear understanding. So without further words, I will give the introduction to Louis. If you can introduce yourself, Louis, that would be great.
Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you for the invitation as well. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. So yeah, I'm Louis. Quick intro about my background. So I basically started my career early days in finance in Switzerland, in private banking, which I stopped after a few years. I mean, for a few reasons, but I think when you're young, you want innovation, you want to try new things. And the corporate world is not necessarily the best for that. And I get on, learn management and learn about technology, learn about sustainability. And I found there were like really a good path in between both on how we could solve a lot of sustainability problem using technology. So yeah, that's the short about myself.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. So coming back into the topic, so we said when we were preparing a bit this interview, I said, okay, I need to understand where you play, why you do this. So it's very important if we can have some kind of start with a high level, okay, to what kind of macro trends or where do you play in some kind of wording that we can understand, and then maybe link it to your space. So just I'm always starting with this question. So what's cooking in your space? So please, can you define it, starting with what is your space?
So I mean, if we look at it from a macro perspective, I think the space is really broad. But so summarize this, it's really the mechanism of like, how do you as an enterprise account for negative externalities of your operation and act on it? So that's, I would say, is the overall, which means like if I have a business that has negative impact on the environment, whether because it pollutes water, it emits way too much CO2, what can I do to compensate this negative impact? So that's like the broad scope. Inside this broad scope, you have obviously everything that a business can do internally to reduce their emission, change the way they operate, maybe change the supply chain, change the machinery they have, change their energy source. So that's everything that's inside the capabilities. And then there's the part of like, obviously you can transition a whole business model from something that has a negative impact on the environment to something that doesn't. It's just not possible. So there is still this scope where, okay, we have done our best, but there is still things that negatively impact the environment. So how can we compensate by providing finance, providing expertise to activities that have a positive impact, but are yet not financially viable? And that's really like kind of where we are acting at. And inside this space, you have a lot of things happening. You have everything around like carbon offsetting with different technology, tech solution, nature solution. And where we really go to is when we could like nature solutions. So a lot of people hear about planting trees, that's reduced because forests reduce carbon. And that's in this really like the nature aspect of how do you as a company compensate for your negative environmental impact and how can you do it at best? That's where we're at. So for the broad scope, and I'm happy to dive deeper into the detail of that.
Okay, so I think I get the point. So I was reading recently, I think it was last week. I think it's I don't remember which UAE states that said that they made a big partnership with the Kenyan states about a large portion of their territory covered by forests as a way to kind of compensate their CO2 emission. Are we in this kind of discussion?
So we are in some sense. I think there's different level here. There's like obviously the state level. So like countries are doing that, right? It's like as at the current moment with like the Paris Agreement, like countries are a bit like companies at the higher level where they say, okay, that's our current impact on the environment. How can we basically, which action can we take to minimize it, reduce it? And for countries that have a lot of natural asset, one way is either to develop this natural asset or to maintain this natural asset to avoid that it decrease. And in this sort of scope where we're talking country to country, yes, we are in the same mechanism, but it's really another level than what we are actually talking about for us.
Okay, so let's go down to more, let's say, a micro, that's enterprise level. Let's say, just for the sake of it, so BASF people do not shout at me just for the message. Let's say you are BASF, you are a chemical player. Let's say a chemical player. Let's make it easy. You're a chemical player. You have, if you look at, let's say, your production processes, you have a lot of emission, CO2 emission in your process. Or if you're in the steel industry, let's say this, that's the one that people come to mind in terms of let's say emission, CO2 emission. These guys are trying to compensate these aspects, and what do? They go to you, or where do you play? Where are you at in this equation?
So perfect example you just took. So now you reach at this point, you're like, okay, now I need to decision of what I'm doing to compensate this negative aspect. So I'm getting aware that there's a lot of there's this potential to finance forestry project, but you don't know which one. And also you learn on the news that there's been scandals that some project actually were supposed to have a massive environmental impact, but had nothing. And this kind of is a huge reputational risk, right? Because it's greenwashing, and no company, no investor wants to finance greenwashing and have that backlashing against them. So that's to prevent this problem of let's say reputational risk that we act on. We don't act directly with the company, so we're not going to be the one you come to and you say, hey, listen, I want to buy a forest because, buying in the wrong term, I want to finance a sustainable forestry practice. What can I do? Can you find one for me? That's not where we're at. There's project developers, like brokers, marketplaces that are the right places, advisors, consulting to do this type of thing. Where we are at is to say, okay, you need to make a decision about which project is the best and ensure that the data you're going to receive from the project are of quality and that the impact is backed by evidence and not just, let's say, fuzzy word about the future. And that's where we are really at the data layer, working with the person developing the forestry project to generate the right data from the grown up. So when they kind of have their let's say, we could simplify it as their forestry project pitch deck to get it to the investor, they really can ensure highest quality and have an easier access to financing.
Okay, clear. So I go back to my example. Okay, I know I need to do something. I want to go in forestry for whatever reason. I could have gone in ocean or I don't know, other things that compensate, let's say, my CO2 emission. I go in forestry for whatever reason. I go to some of my business partners. They come up with different projects. Okay, you can invest here. And then you guys are basically going to be the one that, I don't know if this is the right term, but some kind of doing a little bit of a due diligence, or at least, let's say, getting the right numbers, checking the numbers, so that me as a company, I can have enough data to take a decision. First, to take an upfront decision. Okay, I'm going to support this project, but also on the long run, I'm going to have data that are going to, which I can learn internally and towards my stakeholder, that what I do is let's say proven. That's fact. So it's a decision. Exactly. It's help in the decision, but it's also help in terms of of communication in ensuring that you reach your goal and you can communicate accordingly, is it?
Yeah. That's really that, and maybe to start from one point that's important. Generally, the decision is main based on your operation, right? You choose forestry rather than ocean because like your business has more impact on this project. And I think that's one of the transformation of the market where we can talk about it later is really understanding where your business has impact and not just be, hey, I'm having a mission there. How can I just compensate them with whatsoever? So that was maybe an old paradigm, and this is transitioning. But it's perfectly what you mentioned. So what we ensure is like, first, that your due diligence can be done in an easy way, and that you don't have to rely on 100 different data sources, regenerate data because you can't trust the original data, ask I don't know whatsoever to ensure that you're making a decision that's not going to backfire in terms of reputational risk. So that's really the core is saying how can you have grown-up data that are easy to audit, where you can make informed decision. And the second part is that how can you ensure that, like, if you take the classic example, once the forest has been starting to be rebuilt, so you had different trees that have been planted, that something is happening after that, right? Is that like not just, okay, trees have been planted, but like that they are like healthy and that the forest is growing and so forth. And that actually when you as a company say, hey, this year we compensate, I don't know, this amount of CO2, or we compensate for biodiversity impact, that when an additional stakeholder, a consumer, or like a regulator wants to go look and ensure that like what you did was actually backed by evidence of impact, there we also come in and we ensure that, you know, everything is as proof points that are verifiable.
Okay, thank you for that. So going further down the road, so you take your decision, this is running, but how do you capture the data? If I may just ask this very basic question. I mean, data must come somewhere, from the trees, from the guy that is taking care of the trees. How do you get data?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's not our business to get the data,
Okay.
so we aggregate it, and there is different reason for that. But data source can be really wide, like, and we're still in a phase where we're developing with like technology, developing new sensorial possibilities. You can use satellite, you can use sensor, you can use LiDAR. There's really a wide variety of technology, and I'm sure a lot of like other smart way will come up to be able to monitor and to get what is happening on this forest. So first you get this raw data. Is like, you know, I'm taking a picture of you, but I don't necessarily know anything. And then I'm going to run an algorithm and going to look at your face and like be able to tell me like different characteristic. And then you could do that through time, and then it would enables me to tell you what has been changing in your face through time. And it's kind of the same thing with the forest. It's like you have first this monitoring services, which can be a satellite that take a picture of the forest, gather data on that. Then we have an algorithm that's going to generate it inside, and by looking at it different time over at different moment over time, you are able to see what changed, and therefore is the project going well or is not? Does it have a actual benefit for the environment or not?
Okay. I'm continuing my let's say the kind of the journey. Make me think. Last week I had a guest is an interim sustainability manager. Is high demand right now, but is ready to see, okay, because a lot of regulation are coming up. You know about this. A lot of regulation are coming up, and these are stringent regulations. So you need to comply with this regulation about Green Deal and all those things. So, I mean, it's not only about communicating. You have also to kind of, when you are being audited by whomever, to see, are you compliant or not? It means that the data you're gathering must be of very high quality, because the guys, your customers potentially, are going to be, there's going to be due diligence on if they are compliant or not. So how is it correct that now it's not only about being nice, it's also being proven that what you do is compliant?
That's correct. Then obviously there's a question I can't answer is like, what do we define good data, right? And that's something I'm trying also to understand, because yes, there's been this phase of like, a lot of, let's say, marketing noise, things like, oh, we do a lot of things from the environment. And as you perfectly mentioned, now there is like discussion in the European Union and at different national stage to say, okay, you can't do that. You need, if you say something, it needs to be proven. So what have you done? What are the plans? What will happen? And that there is actually evidence of impact backing any claim. Then what are we talking about evidence? I think that's in our sense, we really want that is like, let's say, the most transparent proof of the impact having happening. But is a self-assessment of what you have done sufficient? Can it be just like a report that someone did for you? I think this is a question I don't have answer to. I think the most granular, the better. But I mean, I guess we will see through time what is considered as good enough when it's about proving your impact.
Okay. Yeah. No, I definitely see it coming. That I mean, you will have some kind of generally accepted reporting way, whatever standard or certification that's going to ensure somehow some kind of transparency and accountability on the data that you provide because of all the past, what you mentioned in the past. I mean, so many like greenwashing things that have been done in the past. No, you have to be very, let's say, down to earth and professional the way you do it. So we are slowly going towards the end of the podcast. So very good overview and it's clear. So let's picture 5 years from now. Does it mean in 5 years from now, I'm coming back to the energy guys, the packaging guys, the steel makers, the chemical guys. Is it going to be something that you or your techno or somebody else, it would be like kind of a given in this strategy? How do you foster this kind of thinking, this kind of action in the overall strategy of a company 5 years from now?
Yeah. I think outside what we're doing, which is just like a technological enabler, we're in a market that's really early and there's a lot of things that are undefined. So if I would have to think about it in 5 years, I think 3 components are really important. The first one is having a clear incentive mechanism for the companies to have to take action and take certain type of action and not whatever action. This can be either massive pressure from investor, risk of getting fined from regulation, or just simply like such a consumer awareness that like you wouldn't get, and you would lose a lot of consumer if you would not take action. So that's one part. Really have an incentive. Okay, we need to take these things and really take it seriously. And then channel down to the second part is like what we just said. What is good enough? Ensuring that there is also framework that it's not about the way you report, but it's about more about which data do you use to report. Is it self-assessed data? Is it data that's been generated from the grown-up, audited, that are really quality data? That's the second part, like to really ensure that we finance and we do things that have an impact. And the third part, which comes down as well to the first one, but is the reverse side of it, is it's for the sector we are in, which is like nature and forestry, is also defining clear signal for forest owners, forest manager, that like there is new business model coming in and like you can earn really decent money by taking care of your forest and be rewarded for the water, the biodiversity, the air, and all these things that have been seen as a given. But if we want this business to continue, you also need the other side of the market to be incentivized to provide them and be rewarded for it. So that's really the 3 components I think that are important for future in this market.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Louis. personally, going back to my expectation, my learning expectation today, 100% achieved. So thank you very much, Louis, for that.
It was a pleasure.
It's not an easy topic, at least for us on the other side of the coin. You are in every day, but let's say I think for us, that's why I wanted to have you. It's a key topic, but we need people like you that say, okay, this is how it works. This is what it means. Because it's important for, as a stakeholder, general stakeholder, maybe to support, to engage, and to know more. So I really, on that point, I really encourage anyone that wants to know more about what we discussed today to go with Louis. He knows what he's talking about. This is what I like as my guest. Go to Louis, ask him questions. Maybe you can do business with him. That's cherry on the cake. Louis, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate this.
It's a pleasure.
We are super busy. I mean, running a startup, I know what it means. So go for it, and wish you all the best with your startup. Thank you again for your time, Louis. And I say thank you for the people that are going to listen afterwards. And we are going to have another week, another great guest. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you.